On this edition of The Best Times, we hit the road with RVs and retirees. You'll find out about a network that helps locate dementia patients who have wandered. And you'll get a walking history lesson. Funding for The Best Times is provided by the Plow Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you. Hello, I'm Chris Hardaway. Welcome to this edition of The Best Times, a series that looks at life after 50. In the 60s, there was a song called Born to be Wild by a group called Steppenwolf. The opening lyric was, "Get your motor running, head out on the highway." Well, that's exactly what thousands of retirees and pre-retirees are doing today. Not on motorcycles, but in RVs, recreational vehicles. It's a lifestyle that draws weekenders, vacationers, seasonal trippers, and even people who sell their house and hit the road full time. Almost half of Americans approaching retirement list travel as one of their retirement goals. Maybe that's why the RV industry is reporting double-digit sales growth over the last few years. Let's hit the road with RVs and retirees. America has always been a nation on wheels. We've loved our vehicles since the days of the Model T. Somewhere along the way, someone thought it would be a good idea to put a house on wheels, and that gave birth to the modern RV, or recreational vehicle. Technically, that includes everything from a pop-up camper to a $1 million motorhome. So who buys RVs? Over 80% of RV buyers are 50 and older. They're people like Donna and Ed Motorin, who enjoy the freedom their motorhome offers.
You know, having an RV, you just go wherever you want to go. It's an adventure way of life.
Recreational vehicles come in many different shapes, sizes, and prices.
Three basic types. You have a Class A, a Class C, a Class B. All those would be motorized. And then, of course, in the towables, you'd have a bumper pull travel trailer, and you would have a fifth wheel travel trailer.
Class A motorhomes are the luxury yachts of the RV lineup. They're built on a bus chassis, can be up to 45 feet long, and cost as much as a new home. In fact, for some RVers, it is their home.
The Class A typically gives you more room and more floor plan options just because they're typically larger. So that's probably the biggest advantage.
Class B and C RVs are very similar. The Class B is built on a van chassis, the Class C on a truck chassis, and both cost about as much as a nice new car.
The C is very affordable, and I think that's its biggest advantage, that you can still be motorized. It's going to have almost as much room as your A. And then when you go to a B, that's typically going to be a small family or a couple's unit. It could be just the van body itself, or it may have a built-on or added-on slide-out or something to give you a little more room. But the advantage of the B would be the ease of traveling and maybe not taking a second tow vehicle with you.
There are two types of non-motorized RVs that attach to either the bumper or the bed of a heavy-duty truck. Because there's no motor or drivetrain, these fifth-wheel RVs can offer economy and luxury at the same time.
It's going to give you more room. It's more livable. Even though it's larger, it's easier to tow and easier to maneuver.
Choosing an RV is largely dictated by the way you will use it. Weekenders and vacationers can get by with a smaller unit, while seasonal trippers and full-timers will need the space offered by one of the larger RVs. Currently, the industry is booming, with expected deliveries of over 380,000 units this year. That growth is fueled in part by the boomer generation. Dawn and Martin Donnelly are in their 50s and have been RVers for 5 years. They've owned 2 RVs, a Class A motorhome, and this brand new fifth wheel model. Today they're doing their favorite thing, spending a long weekend at a state park.
And we very quickly kind of fell in love with this setting. You know, sitting by the fire in the morning with a cup of coffee. We sit outside in the evening a lot with the fire going, taking the dogs for walks, going out in the woods. And so we really latched on pretty quickly to, this is a very pleasant way to go spend a few days and relax.
At one time we talked about getting a lake house someplace, but then we realized with this, we have our lake house. We just take it wherever we want. We just take it to whatever lake or whatever area we want to go. It comes with us.
Donna and Ed Motorin are spending the Labor Day weekend at a campground outside Samstown Casino. They're both retired, they've owned 4 motorhomes, and they've been RVing for 14 years. For them, the RV lifestyle means meeting people and getting to know them.
It's a family. It's just not just a overnight stay, but you meet the best and you they become friends for life. The people that we stand with next door here, we have been traveling, living, going RVing with them for the past, what, Donna? 11 years. We met them at an RV resort. We're looking right now, and we became the best of friends.
Whether you're in a commercial campground or a state park, whether you enjoy the solitude of communing with nature or prefer the company of fellow RVers, the lure of the RV lifestyle is traveling wherever the road takes you.
We go down to Destin, Florida a lot, to the beaches. We go to the Great Smoky Mountains, to the mountains, okay?
I've been flying for 30 years and I've crisscrossed this country and seen some of the neatest things, and I can't tell you how many times I went, oh, I bet that's pretty neat down there. And now I want to go do it the slow version. Literally, there are places I have seen from the air that I don't even know what's there. I just want to go there and see what that's all about. And so that's kind of our retirement plan, is take off for a couple or 3 months, go enjoy kind of a region of the country and come back home and do it again a few months later.
It's a life that has no east, west, north, or south. You just, wherever you think you want to go, you can go.
One of the most frightening thoughts for caregivers is the fear of an Alzheimer's or dementia patient wandering off. The fear is very real. According to the Alzheimer's Association, 6 in 10 people with dementia will wander. But there are ways you can limit the risk. Let's examine some strategies and a new network that helps prevent wandering. I think one of the scariest and most frustrating things that a family caregiver could realize is to realize that moment where their loved one with dementia or Alzheimer's has wandered off somewhere, and now they have no clue as to what to do next or why. Let's begin with talking about why Alzheimer's and dementia patients wander. Why do they wander?
Yeah, that's a great question, and to answer it, I think you sort of have to put yourself in the mindset of a person with Alzheimer's. Doctors and scientists tell us that the Alzheimer's person's brain is different. It has eroded. The connections are not where they used to be. In fact, it actually shrinks in size and weight. So things aren't connecting. So you hear that people with Alzheimer's have long-term memory. They can't oftentimes remember what just happened, or they'll ask multiple questions time after time. So if they have long-term memory, they are most likely in most wandering situations remembering something that they think they need to be to.
Is that what triggers this?
Those are triggers. There are a number of triggers for that. But the important thing to remember is they are not aimlessly wandering. Wandering is sort of a misnomer because in their minds, they have a destination. They're going to a place at a time that they think is relevant, but it is not relevant and is not real at this time. But in their minds, it is. So they have a destination. Their wandering to us is destination for them.
So what are some of the triggers?
So there are a number of triggers. So for a person with Alzheimer's or dementia, if they tend to be really tired and confused more late in the day, that's called sundowning. And sometimes that's often the times when they'll wonder. Also, overstimulation. If you have a loved one who, let's say, is typically in a quiet home, and they've been to maybe you've been out with them and lots of interaction, lots of people, that's confusing to them. And so sometimes that will cause their minds to go back to something and have them wonder. So there are a number of other triggers. When they tend to be disoriented with their place and time. If they talk about needing to fulfill something that you know is not real, but in their mind it is. Say for instance, we had a recent person who at 3 o'clock, she was ready to go pick the kids up from school because that's what she remembered from 50 years ago. At 3 o'clock, she left the house to pick her kids up from school. So at 3 o'clock, she could read the clock. She had her purse on her arm and she was ready to go.
Are there signs that caregivers can pick up on to perhaps notify them that wandering might be imminent?
Having difficulty navigating familiar places is certainly a sign. And I'm not talking about just driving or even being out of the house. Oftentimes in their very own home, a person with Alzheimer's may forget where the restroom is, or forget how to get to the kitchen, or forget how to get to their bedroom. Those are really telltale signs that caregivers need to be aware of. That sundowning, that agitation or confusion late in the afternoon is also a sign. And then wanting to go home when they're actually already there. Again, that long-term memory kicks in, and they are most likely remembering a childhood home. And they're in a place that's unfamiliar to them. They are of particular danger, and that is a very particular sign that you could have a loved one that might wander.
Are there any proactive steps that a caregiver can take?
Yeah, you know, there are a lot of proactive steps, and particularly there's a lot of new technology. There are GPS devices now that are as small enough so that you can sew them into the lining of your loved one's clothes or their purse. They even have some that fit into the soles of shoes now. And they can actually alert you via cell phone when your loved one gets outside a certain perimeter of their home. But I certainly recommend that if you have a loved one who has Alzheimer's and you're concerned with any of these triggers or warning signs, that you find a way to have some type of ID bracelet on them. How many times have we heard on the news or read the paper where someone wandered and somebody might have found them, but they didn't have any idea where they went, or a Jane Doe, they didn't know where she went. So ID bracelets, which through the Alzheimer's Association you can find out how to get those. But also there are a number of devices we recommend to our families that just a simple door chime, if they don't have a door alarm system, you can actually go out and buy for $20 these 4 little door chimes, and you can stick them on the door and the facing of the door. When that door opens, it chimes.
So you always know someone is coming or going.
That's right. It will alert the caregiver, the family loved one, or the professional caregiver in the home that that door is open. Whether it should be or not, they know it is. So there are a number of things that technology has brought our way that help protect people. Fences in yards. You know, I was reading a story about a loved one who got out in the middle of the night, but he couldn't get out of the fence, so he ended up knocking on the door and waking his loved ones up from the outside. And it was a very cold night, by the way. But those kinds of things, just being proactive. And A senior with dementia or Alzheimer's is not unlike any senior that has the dangers of trip hazards. So making sure that pathways are clear, that corners of rugs aren't sticking up, or extension cords aren't across walking spaces, those things are important as well.
Now, God forbid, if you realize that your loved one is missing, what's the first step you should take? Should you call 911?
Yeah, actually, that is a good thing to do, is to call 911. Now, typically with missing persons, they'll wait for a period of time, but if you let them know you have a loved one who has Alzheimer's that is missing, they'll put more urgency on that. I recommend taking more proactive steps and registering with a program that lets your loved ones know if you have a senior that's wandered.
Yeah, that's the Missing Senior Network.
Missing Senior Network.
Talk about that.
Well, it's missingseniornetwork.com, and that's something that Home Instead has put together so that if you have a loved one with Alzheimer's, you can register on there, and you can go ahead and load contacts, and those contacts can be contacts that you physically load, or you can just put your Facebook contacts in there. And so in the event your loved one wanders, you just simply log on to this website, click a button, and send an alert, and it sends all your friends and colleagues and anybody you put on there. You can include the police department. Anybody you put on your contact list will be alerted that your loved one is missing.
And this is all done through your computer.
That's
on the
correct.
website missingsenior.com,
missingseniornetwork.com,
or on Facebook.
Yeah, that's right. What sends it through Facebook?
How long has that been in operation?
It's pretty new. Home Instead constantly tries to do things that help the family caregiver, that help families keep senior loved ones at home. And we know Alzheimer's and other dementias are so prevalent. There are so many issues facing our seniors today. So we're just simply trying to put out information that's free. There's no charge for this, that help families deal with these problems.
Well, it will be interesting to see in the future the effect of things like the Missing Senior Network, and hopefully it will work, because it is such a serious issue, often overlooked, wandering Alzheimer's and dementia patients. Ken, thank you very much for being on The Best Times and talking about this important topic.
Great to be here. Thank you.
All right. For more information on preventing wandering, go to this website sponsored by Home Instead Senior Care. Poet and novelist Rudyard Kipling wrote, "If history were taught in the form of stories, it would never be forgotten." Telling stories about history is the stock and trade of Jimmy Ogle. In good weather in the spring and fall, you can find him on a downtown street corner, rattling off dozens of stories about Memphis history to a curious crowd. If you listen to him for a few minutes, you'll learn things you never knew about the Bluff City, because Jimmy Ogle is a walking history lesson. It's an important historical weekend in Memphis, the 150th anniversary of the sinking of the steamboat Sultana. And Jimmy Ogle is leading one of his free tours along the Memphis riverfront.
And what I like to say is no city in America tells a story of American history better than Memphis, Tennessee.
When you look at the early Native Americans and European explorers and American settlers to the 20th century entrepreneurs, from Civil War to civil rights, music to medicine, transportation, distribution, all the first of Memphis. I got 20 hours in my head. There's about 400 good years of Memphis history. And usually I get about 20 minutes to talk about it, so I talk real fast. So what I try to do is what I call a Cliff Notes version.
The cobblestone started being laid in 1852, 19 different work sessions over a 40-year period of time. There's over 1 million cobblestones left in here. Right now you see about 1/3 of the cobblestones.
1 million cobblestones? I've lived in Memphis most of my life, and I never knew that. Plus, Jimmy says it's the largest original cobblestone wharf left in America. But that's the amazing thing about Jimmy Ogle. He loves Memphis, loves history, and loves telling everyone about it.
I'm a lifelong Memphian, born in Baptist Hospital on November the 14th, 1952, and I looked in the paper a couple of years ago for the November 15th edition of 1952, and it just says, "A boy born to Dr. and Mrs. Elsie Ogle, 1747 Peabody Avenue." So I didn't have a name when I was born.
Speaking of interesting facts, Jimmy Ogle doesn't have a PhD in history.
I majored in education. I had a BS in education. I got a Parks and Recreation emphasis. I had one history class in my life by Dr. Crawford, University of, who's still there, Dr. Charles Crawford.
Jimmy says he's learned Memphis history through osmosis, absorbing the knowledge through his experiences.
Yeah, and it got into me by osmosis, yeah, by wandering around the city and exploring and driving and going here and there in places I shouldn't go, and old buildings that have been closed down, you know, and are falling down.
And between 1880 and 1920, over 70% of the cotton crop in America was within 200 miles of Memphis. So we cleared out all these hardwoods, started planting cotton. We're the cotton capital of the world. To do all that, we're the mule capital of the world. Again, right here in Memphis. Front Street up there, 30 feet higher, never flooded. That's where Cotton Row was. So that's why they classed all the cotton. They'd bring the cotton up off the boats up here, or bring it back down. And the mules couldn't take it straight up, it was too steep, so they had to zigzag back and forth. That's why these streets are wider here coming down to the cobblestones. Usually they come all the way down.
Because of his wealth of knowledge and his love of history, Jimmy was recently named the official historian of Shelby County.
We had two historians of Shelby County, Evelyn Davis Rogers and then Ed Williams. I'm the third. I got one history class in my life, hadn't written a book. I don't care to write a book. I tell people, if I write a book, it's gonna be one long run-on sentence, you know? And I don't have time to do that. I'd rather just talk.
Watching Jimmy rattle off one historical fact after another, you begin to wonder how he's able to keep 20 hours of Memphis history in his head.
When you get in your car, you probably have a CD, and you put it in that slot, and you sing along with that CD, and that's about an hour of information. You got those things. Or when a song comes on the radio, you know the words. You probably know the words to 40 Beatles songs right now that you grew up with, you know, or Elvis or whatever. The capacity is there. I just repeat myself all the time. It's just Memphis. You know, you could go right now and add up the number of songs. That's probably 10 hours of information. Exact lyrics, exact words. That's all it is. You have that capacity. Like I say, I'm just flipping PowerPoints in my head.
On June 6, 1862, the largest inland naval battle in the history of the world occurred right there, about where Mud Island is, between the Union fleet and the Confederate fleet. The Union fleet had 18 gunboats and 80 guns. The Confederate fleet had 8 gunboats and 18 guns. Coming down river, they were ironclad boats. The Confederate boats were cotton-clad boats. So it was a real mismatch. The citizens came out and sat on the bluffs up here and watched it like it was an NFL football game, because they were shooting at each other in the river, not at the land. Memphis never had any land battles, never was destroyed at all by fighting. Memphis was so the battle lasted 90 minutes, and we were in northern town for the last 3 years of the war.
This year, Jimmy will be giving 200 history lectures at places like schools and senior centers, and 50 walking history tours in downtown Memphis this spring and fall. And they're all free. On this Sunday afternoon, Jimmy ends his walking tour at the historical marker commemorating the tragedy of the Sultana, a steamboat carrying over 2,300 people, most of them Union prisoners of war, returning home. 7 miles upriver from Memphis, where boilers exploded.
Over 1,700 people lost their life. It's the largest maritime disaster in the history of our country. The Titanic loss of life was 1,500 comparatively. And you know a lot more about the Titanic than you do about the Sultana. Bodies flowed by Memphis for days up until May. They said bodies were landing on the cobblestones down here.
While we had a microphone on Jimmy, I thought it would be a good time to get some fast facts about the history of Memphis.
We call it the Bluff City for several reasons. One, the co-founders never lived here. They all lived in the Nashville area. This was a pure business venture for them. And Shelby, who wasn't a Memphian, who wasn't a Tennessean, he was the governor of Kentucky. We named our county because of his efforts there. All of West Tennessee for the first 22 years we were a state wasn't even known by the state of Tennessee. It's owned by the Chickasaw Nation. We bought it for 4.5 cents an acre. Our streets are animal paths. Poplar's an old animal path because of the high ridge that they walked, and the Native Americans walked it, then European explorers walked it, then American settlers, then the wagon trains, and we paid Poplar. We're number 6 on the National Register of Historic Places for listings in the country, behind Washington, Philadelphia, Baltimore, New York City, and New Orleans. We have over 11,000 properties listed here. 2 Memphians ever on the cover of Time magazine is Boss Crump and Kimmons Wilson. No Fred Smith, no Elvis.
From the early Native Americans and European explorers to the 20th century entrepreneurs we've had here, from Civil War to civil rights, music to medicine, the whole deal. We tell it better than anybody.
I'm 62 years old. I mean, I have the energy of a 16-year-old most of the time, and the curiosity of a 6-year-old, and you know, some of the brains of a 2-year-old sometimes, and I'm just going to do this, you know, and do it. And I've learned a lot from mistakes, but I've had a lot of great experiences here. I'm the luckiest Memphian there is.
Remember here, Chris, 41% of continental North America.
Want more information about life after 50? Go online to watch more shows and find more resources. And send us your feedback and story ideas to besttimes@wkno.org. That's all for this edition of The Best Times. Please join us next week for more stories about life after 50. Until then, I'm Chris Hardaway. Thanks for watching. Good night. Funding for The Best Times is provided by the Plow Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you.